F1 2019 is just a matter of weeks away and marks 10 years of F1 games from Codemasters, so I reckon this is as good a time as any to take a look back at how the series has gone so far. So in this second part, let's rewind 7 years and have a look at F1 2012. After the slight disappointment of F1 2011, in my opinion at least, it was time to get things back on track. And the good thing is, the F1 2012 does at least feel a bit newer than F1 2011. The menus were in a wind tunnel rather than lurking around in a paddock, which was quite nice, and the whole thing kind of felt a lot more slick and it looked a lot better, to be honest. New features included the Young Driver test at Abu Dhabi, which consisted of a few tests somewhat like the old license tests you used to get in Gran Turismo, which would help you determine which team you could start with if you were going to be doing the career mode. Now, I do remember this being a fairly neat way to start the game, but unfortunately for me, my PlayStation 3's hard drive broke on the same day as I got the game whilst doing the Young Driver test, so I can only assume that the Young Driver test is the one that actually killed my hard drive. Maybe. There was also a Champions mode where you had to race in scenarios against one of the 6 F1 world champions who were driving in the 2012 season. And I suppose it's a nice idea, but going by my old save data, doesn't look like I really bothered with this mode much. The final new mode was the Season Challenge mode, which reduced the season to 10 races and you could move teams more frequently throughout the season. And it basically tried to condense the career mode into a much smaller amount of time. It was okay, but I think I did one season of it, maybe max. All in all, I'm not really sure these new modes added a huge amount, but fair play to Codemasters at least for trying. One of the other new things for 2012 was the US Grand Prix at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, which I'm driving here in Fernando Alonso's Ferrari. It's never been one of my favourite tracks on the calendar, even to this day, but at least it looks very nice, and that was one of the things that struck me when I went back and played F1 2012. I think the graphics are really good for a PS3 or Xbox 360 era racing game. Definitely a step up from the graphics in 2011 or indeed 2012. The game itself handles quite nicely, despite my useless driving here. I don't really remember any major issues or bugs or glitches either with the game at all, either offline or online. I just remember it being a really solid entry. That said, I do recall the career mode being slightly less engaging than previous efforts. Rather than doing everything in the paddock like in 2011 or 2010, everything was now just done via the main menu and in boxes and stuff like that, and it felt a bit stale and disconnected to the actual game itself. I vaguely recall doing a bit of a season with Williams, but I don't really think I bothered too much with it after that. At least going by the stats in my save game profile on the game, which was still intact to this day. Incidentally, while going through these stats, I found a very interesting record that I had, which was a longest brake lockup of 529.98 metres. That's over half a kilometre. How do you lock up your brakes for over half a kilometre? How have you not stopped after applying the brakes for half a kilometre? Answers on a postcard, please. So F1 2012 was definitely a step back in the right direction. The game was good, the online mode was good, the graphics were good. It all sounds very good. That said, I don't have any particular fondness for the game though, like I do with F1 2010. And as a lot of the offline modes kind of missed their mark, although I do appreciate the efforts at trying some new things, I think I would give F1 2012 an 8 out of 10. It's a good entry in the series, and it's a job well done by Codemasters, so thumbs up. But of course, F1 2012 was not the only Formula 1 game to come out in 2012. F1 Race Stars came out in November 2012 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PC, and seems to be an attempt to answer the question that no one had ever asked: what if F1 was Mario Kart? The idea was that you could pick a caricature of your favourite driver from the 2012 F1 season, drive them around tracks that partly resemble their real life counterparts and partly resemble a generic made up track based on things you might associate with the country they're racing in, then add in the same old weapons or power-ups that have been in every single karting game since the dawn of time, and you get F1 Race Stars. And apart from a sort of gimmick about damage and having to go in the pits to repair it, that was it. It was just Mario Kart, but F1. One thing that's notable about F1 Race Stars is that all of the F1 games have had various representations of the drivers, but this was the first one where you actually got to hear them speak.
Yeah! G'day! Let's go! Let's go!
Hi, I'm Alonso.
Come vai? Hey! Como ça va? Alright! Hi! Hi, que ça va so? Vamos! Let's go! Quasi! Good! Como está? Let's go! Good! Hola! How are you? Yeah! Ale!
Woohoo! Woohoo! Okay!
Hi, y'all!
Seriously, if Fernando Alonso does not introduce himself to everyone he meets by saying,
Hi, I'm Alonso.
then I'm going to be absolutely devastated. So what is F1 Race Stars actually like to play? Well, the first thing I should mention is that despite it being all karty and stuff, you do kind of need to drive properly in this game. In Mario Kart or other games like that, if you see a tight corner, you just drift round it. But in this you need to think about racing lines occasionally, and sometimes you need to brake. I know, braking in a cartoony kart game just seems wrong. I don't get it. Apart from that, it's alright. When I started this game up, I was fully expecting to go all in on how stupid and pointless and rubbish and how it didn't make any sense whatsoever. But having actually played it, I actually kind of had some fun. And there's something quite charming about seeing actual bits of real circuits that you recognise stuck in the middle of a fairly generic kart racing track. I mean, this is the end of the Abu Dhabi circuit, and it is basically the end of the Abu Dhabi track, which is quite nice. Although unlike in real life, after about one corner you go up a roller coaster. Maybe that's something to add in for a future expansion to the Abu Dhabi circuit. Would liven things up for sure anyway. Also, when I was playing all of these PS3 era games, I went into the online mode to see if anyone was playing, and no games had any online sessions available, apart from F1 Race Stars, which means that it's got some kind of enduring appeal, and even if there was only one room with 2 people playing in it, or 3 when I joined it anyway, that's got to be something in its credit too. Plus, when I was playing the online races, it had a functioning safety car. The safety car actually came out, which right off the bat means its online mode is better than F1 2018's. Fact. That said, I still don't really get why the game exists, unfortunately. I don't see there being a massive market for an F1 game that's actually Mario Kart, but isn't actually that karty, because you still have to drive it properly. It seems a bit of a weird move, and although I suppose I could say that this came out on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, so it's not directly competing with Mario Kart. This game actually came out on the same day as Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which is a really, really good karting game. So when the day actually came and I had the choice between buying this or Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, I bought Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. I got this on PlayStation Plus for free about a year later and played it a little bit and then stopped, because if I wanted to play a kart game, I played the Sonic one. If I want to play a Formula 1 game, I played an F1 game. This kind of doesn't really work in either end, and as a result, as fun as it is and as charming as it can be, I just don't get why it exists. And as such, I'm going to give F1 Race Stars a 5 out of 10. It has its charms, but really, it's not a great game. So after making 2 Formula 1 games in 2012, Codemasters decided only one of them was going to get a sequel. Fortunately, that sequel was F1 2013, which I bought digitally on the PlayStation Store, so I don't have a box. I mean, deal with it.
Formula 1, the greatest competition. Cars designed and engineered by the brightest minds, driven to the edge and beyond by the world's chosen few. Teams rise and fall, drivers come and go, but echoes of the past always remain. Competing in arenas that have stood the test of time, where glory and failure are separated by fractions, where victories are rescued from the jaws of defeat. This is where history is made. This is Formula 1.
Thanks for the intro, Crofty. As you'll have guessed, F1 2013's big thing was classic F1 content, as well as a load of classic F1 cars from the 80s and 90s. You also got 4 classic tracks in the form of Jerez, Brands Hatch, Estoril and Imola. Not only was this a welcome addition regardless, but it also kind of helped cover up the fact that otherwise there were no new tracks in the F1 2013 season. In fact, we lost one track with the European Grand Prix at Valencia being dropped from the calendar in that year. We also lost a team in the shape of HRT, so kind of needed some extra cars as well. In terms of the non-classic content, there's not really anything to shout about in F1 2013. All of the same modes are here, nothing really new to speak of. So if you're hoping for something like a revamp for career mode or anything like that, then unfortunately you'd be out of luck. The game's still good though, and I had plenty of fun with league racing on F1 2013. Similar to 2012, I don't remember any massive issues with the online, any glitches or anything like that. So from a single player and a multiplayer point of view, it was a good solid game, a nice iteration upon the base from F1 2012. In terms of the classic content, as well as learning that the garages in the olden days were barely anything more than a glorified shed, from the looks of its menu screen anyway, it was really nice to have a nice selection of different cars from different manufacturers, although it was only really Williams, Lotus and Ferrari who got involved, and some of the cars, they're not really classic cars, they're kind of just there. I mean, who's been sat here all these years thinking, my god, I really, really wish I was able to drive a 1999 Williams, driven to not really much success whatsoever by Ralf Schumacher and Alex Zanardi. It's just there as a car for the 1999 Ferrari to beat. Instead, I think the star of the classic content is the tracks. Driving a 2013 F1 car, like I'm doing here with Nico Hulkenberg's Sauber, around an old track like Brands Hatch is really fun. Having a track that you can lap in under a minute, or if you're good at least, with barely any straights was a really intense experience. in a weird way, it kind of reminded me of Wipeout. It just had a really nice flow to it, and you kind of just got in the zone after a few laps. Plus all the other tracks were really good too, and we incorporated them into our league racing calendars to really good effect. It's a shame then that in recent Formula 1 games, all of the classic content has been solely focused on the cars and not the tracks. It would be really good if they could have some classic tracks in the future. I mean, would it really be that hard to add some of these ones they've already kind of got? Or maybe some of the more recently discontinued tracks like, say, Malaysia or something? That being said, this doesn't seem like a particularly brilliant representation of Brands Hatch, given that I've raced on it a lot in Gran Turismo Sport over the last year or so. It seems a bit too wide for my liking. Maybe it's based on an older version of a track from the 80s or something like that. Still, a slightly iffy version of Brands Hatch is still a good track if you ask me, and I'd still much rather have it than nothing at all. In terms of the game then, I think if you take away all the nostalgia and rose tinted glasses and stuff like that, I think F1 2013 was the best Formula 1 game on the PlayStation 3 by Codemasters. F1 2010 is probably my favourite, but this is almost certainly the best one. The game itself is good, the content's good, the tracks are good, the classic cars, the modern cars, the online, it's all really good. And as a result, I would give F1 2013 a 9 out of 10. Again, it's not perfect, so I can't give it that 10 out of 10. The career mode is just kind of boring, and the rest of the offline stuff isn't really much to write home about, so that costs it that 1 mark from being a perfect game, if you ask me anyway. Now of course, F1 2013 wasn't the final F1 game of the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, as despite the next generation of consoles coming out in November 2013, F1 2014 came out in October 2014 for the PS3, Xbox 360 and PC only. According to Wikipedia, it had been planned for a PS4 and Xbox One version to actually happen, but they didn't. As I'd already moved over to the PS4 by that point, I didn't get F1 2014, but by all accounts it's a bit rubbish. The classic content is gone and replaced by nothing. Half the user base is gone at least, so good luck getting online games or having an actual league. I know that my league didn't actually happen for 2014, and I've heard other things about the handling being a bit crap and stuff like that. So I don't really regret giving F1 2014 a miss, and I'm certainly not going to go and try and track down a copy to review it for you now. Sorry about that. So that's all for this video. Let me know what you thought below, and let me know what you thought about the PS3 era of Formula 1 games, 2012, Race Stars, 2013, or if you were one of the people who actually got 2014. What did you think of that? And if you did like the video, then don't forget to hit that like button, or consider subscribing to my channel. It's always massively appreciated. Next time, we'll have a look at the PS4 and Xbox One era of F1 games and see how Codemasters got on with the move to next gen. I have a sneaky feeling that one of the next batch of games might just get my lowest rating yet. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.